10 Archaeological Unsolved Mysteries of the United States. A centuries-old stone wall, stretching for miles, enormous pictures scratched into the ground of a desert, rocks arranged in a circle. You know what these landmarks are, right? Guess again. Instead of the Great Wall of China or Stonehenge, these are all ancient American ruins and landmarks. The United States is a relative newcomer to the world stage, but there have been people long living on this continent, and they've left traces of their presence just as mysterious as those found in other countries. 1. The mystery of the Miami Circle, Florida. The worst place in Florida to discover an ancient mystery is on prime real estate in downtown Miami. Not only is this story about an ancient mystery, it's also about a struggle to save history from the developer's bulldozer. The Sunshine State has lost more historical sites to development than to any other cause, which is why local historians say when money talks, history walks. In 1998, while demolishing an old building in downtown Miami, to make way for a new high-rise condominium, a 38-foot diameter circular pattern of holes was uncovered cut in the limestone bedrock. It was one of the greatest discoveries in Florida archaeology, but there was a great big problem. It was sitting on a $10 million piece of property that was estimated to be worth 20 times that amount if the 2-acre site was developed into a condominium complex. The location is in the center of the city on the south side of the Miami River. Archaeologists from the Miami-Dade County's Historic Preservation Division examined the weird circle and determined that the holes were used to support posts for a large round council house. The circle was estimated to have been built between 1,000 and 2,000 years ago by the Tequesta Indians, which had died out centuries before the Seminoles migrated to the Florida Peninsula. Not everyone agreed with the findings, and argued that the circle was nothing more than the remains of an old septic tank, and that the holes were overflow drain holes cut in the limestone. One man postulated that the pre-Columbian circle was part of a worldwide system of ancient circles that were somehow connected with Stonehenge. This theory caused some to dub the circle Stonehenge. Others claimed it was a sacred Mayan astronomical observatory for marking the passage of time. Opinions ranged from the circle having a connection to Atlantis to being a corner marker for the Bermuda Triangle. Media reports soon attracted New Age types, historians, Seminole Indians, shamans, spiritualists, and school kids, all wanting a glimpse of the ancient discovery or to experience its supernatural qualities. The Miami Circle was designated the Brickell Point Archaeological Site. It sits on land once owned by William Brickell, a pioneer who ran an early trading post. William Brickell's weird mausoleum is nearby. I say weird because it is empty. When Miami began getting too crowded, Brickell's remains were removed by his descendants and reinterred in a Dade County cemetery. Excavating the ancient circle was not an easy task. Previously 6 two-story apartment buildings and a swimming pool had occupied the property, and the ground was filled with rusty plumbing pipes, reinforcement steel, concrete, and other debris. After a tremendous amount of labor, the site was eventually cleared, exposing at least 200 other post holes, cut in the limestone in addition to the ones forming the weird circle. Other features uncovered included a carving in the stone of a large eye motif, 24 rectangular basins, a complete carapace of a sea turtle, a shark skeleton, and teeth from an extinct monk seal and a human. The most curious items were fragments of copper and galena along with 2 small axe heads crafted from basalt. Since none of this material is indigenous to Florida, it indicated that these early people had an extensive trade network 2,000 years ago. Several of the exotic artifacts uncovered at the circle led archaeologists to believe that the site was used for ritualistic or elite ceremonial purposes. This was supported by the shark and turtle remains that were found in what appeared to be an east-west orientation, perhaps deliberately placed for ceremonial reasons. A surveyor carefully calculated that solitary holes found 41 feet on each side of the circle's center could predict the autumnal equinox and the summer and winter solstices. It added fuel to the theory that the circle was Mayan, built as a giant astronomical calendar, or some kind of ancient almanac. And that eye motif carved in the limestone, that's the Maya symbol for 0. The idea that the circle was a Mayan project is not so far-fetched, when you consider how close the Yucatan Peninsula is to the tip of Florida, and the Maya did in fact build seagoing canoes. It would have been easy for Mayan mariners to ride the Gulf Stream over to Florida, although returning home may have been a problem. The Miami Circle was indeed a great archaeological find that needed serious study, but it was standing in the way of a multi-million-dollar development. The press played up the events, which attracted so many people that the place had to be fenced off. For those who could not make it to Miami, a camera was fixed to the roof of a nearby high-rise to beam pictures to the internet. Soon there were 200 websites carrying news about the Miami Circle and an online petition for saving the site. The 2,000-year-old circle had evolved into a kind of shrine that was magnetically drawing attention from around the world. Maybe there really was something magic about this circle. Save the Circle groups held candlelight vigils, while protesters made daily marches with signs demanding the site be protected against development. Thousands of letters poured into government offices requesting action from local and state representatives. Experts, in an attempt to save the circle, even studied the possibilities of making a gigantic plaster cast of the site, or sawing it up in sections and moving it to a safer location. At one point, due to legal proceedings, permission was needed from the presiding circuit court judge just to see the circle. In October 2003, Senator Bob Graham introduced legislation that would authorize a feasibility study for incorporating the prehistoric site into the Biscayne National Park. When I visited the circle, people were kept back by a security fence, and the entire site was covered by sheets of black plastic. Ultimately, Miami-Dade County, using the law of eminent domain, claimed the 2.2-acre site, and it was subsequently purchased for $26.7 million with a combination of funding coming from the state's Conservation and Recreational Lands Program, local contributions, and a loan from the Trust for Public Land. To preserve the site until more study can be made, the circle has been covered with gravel. The ancient people who once occupied this site could have never dreamed of the commotion their weird circle would stir up 2,000 years later in downtown Miami, or that images their work would flash around the world on the internet. Perhaps the weirdest part of the Miami Circle's case is how the ancient past has collided head-on with the present. Maybe the ancients have sent us a message in this circle. If so, we just have to figure out what it is. 2. The Mystery of Hemet Maze Stone, Hemet, California. Near the town of Hemet in the Reinhardt Canyon of Southern California, there is a curious petroglyph known as the Hemet Maze Stone. It is a figure made of interconnected rectilinear shapes that form a cyclic pattern of mazes inside a square or rectangle. The overall shape vaguely resembles a swastika, a symbol used in Native American and Asian art for millennia before it became associated with the Third Reich. Archaeologists do not know exactly who made the drawing, or how old it is. Various identities have been suggested for the petroglyph's creator. Suggestions range from an unknown indigenous Californian culture to Chinese Buddhist monks. This article will examine two of the popular theories, and evaluate them in light of what archaeologists, historians, and other scholars know for certain about the artist behind the maze. A Chinese connection. The first theory, which is also the most controversial and outside the mainstream, is that the petroglyph was made by Chinese Buddhist monks or shipwrecked sailors. Proponents of this view argue that parts of the maze look like interconnected swastikas forming into a giant swastika-like symbol. The swastika is a common symbol in Buddhist art and symbolizes eternity in that context. The similarity in the shape of the figure to a swastika was recognized quite early, and even led to vandalism in the 1930s, when someone etched a Nazi swastika onto the petroglyph. This theory is influenced by suggestions that the Chinese reached the Americas before Columbus arrived to the island of Hispaniola. If any culture could have reached and established settlements in the Americas before the Europeans, it would have been the Chinese. In the early 15th century, the Chinese Admiral Zheng He made expeditions to Malaysia, Sumatra, India, and East Africa. This has led some enthusiasts to wonder if the Chinese could have reached the Americas. Gavin Menzies, a former naval officer, has even written a book titled 1421, The Year China Discovered America, suggesting that Admiral Zheng He made a voyage in which he reached America before the emperor shut down his program of exploration and destroyed all records of the voyage. There are a few problems with this theory, however. First, many historians reject Menzies' theory since it lacks hard evidence, and he does not cite original sources. Another problem is that there is no evidence of an ancient Chinese presence in California at that time. There are no iron tools used in Imperial China, no Chinese settlements, no remains of monasteries, nothing that would suggest settlement by the Chinese or Buddhist monks. Furthermore, although Chinese Buddhist art does contain swastikas, the Buddhist swastika bears little resemblance to the swastika-like symbol on the Hemet maze stone. Indigenous Californian artists. The second major theory, one which fits in with a conventional understanding of the history of Southern California, is that the petroglyphs were made by indigenous Californians. The main support for this view is the similarity between the maze petroglyph and other examples of rock art in Southern California. The petroglyph of the Hemet maze stone is like rock art found in the Riverside and San Diego counties known as the Rancho Bernardo style. This style is noted for numerous rectilinear shapes made of parallel lines that come together at right angles. The Rancho Bernardo style also lacks figures such as plants and animals and contains only abstract geometric shapes. The art is composed mostly of lines and boxes, quite like the Hemet maze stone. This form of rock art is found in places in the Riverside and San Diego counties including the Salton Sea, Palm Canyon, Travertine Point, Sunshine Summit, and Rancho Bernardo, from which it gets its name. One problem with this theory is that archaeologists still haven't been able to connect the art style to a specific indigenous culture. However, one culture that archaeologists have suggested as the source of the Rancho Bernardo style are the Kumeyaay people. Many of the examples of Rancho Bernardo rock art occur within the traditional territory of the Kumeyaay, however it is also found in territories of the Luiseno, Juanano, Capino, and Killa cultures to the north and east. Ken Hedges, a founding member of the American Rock Art Association and a rock art expert, says that the art style could have started in Kumeyaay territory and then spread to the north and east from there. But he also proposes it could have been introduced from the desert and spread westward and southward instead. Both theories have uncertainties. The theory that the Hemet maze stone was made by the Chinese however has more challenges that need to be addressed for the theory to be accepted. To date, no indisputable archaeological or historical evidence has been found that the ancient Chinese were in the Americas before the Europeans. The Hemet maze stone is also created in a rock art style ubiquitous across Southern California. If the Chinese made the Hemet maze stone and other examples of similar rock art in the area, a relatively large-scale settlement consisting of multiple outposts would be required since this rock art is far inland and implies a sustained presence. This would suggest that archaeologists could find Chinese-style outposts as well as Chinese material culture dating to the pre-Columbian period. Yet, no Chinese outposts, monasteries, or material culture dating to before 1500 have been found in California so far. All that has been found in association with rock art like the Hemet maze stone is indigenous Californian material culture. Arrowheads, vessels, mortars, and other Stone Age tools used by the Native American inhabitants have been found throughout Southern California and at sites near similar rock art. The current state of the evidence suggests that it is more likely the petroglyph was made by indigenous Californians or other Native Americans. But it is entirely possible that future evidence will reveal that the history of Eurasian exploration in the Americas is more complex than generally believed. 3. The mystery of the Judaculla rock, Silva, North Carolina. Buried in the mountains of Jackson County, just outside of Silva, there exists a very, very strange rock. The rock is rather large and adorned with mysterious and indistinguishable carvings and writings. The ancient petroglyphs are said to date back almost 3,000 years. The story of the rock and how it came to be is unknown, but deeply rooted in Cherokee folklore. Judaculla rock has no definitive origin, and is said to date back to before the Cherokee Indians inhabited the land. The drawings, carvings, writings all seem to be some sort of map or maybe a story. Archaeologists believe the rock might be 2,000 to 3,000 years old. The name Judaculla is a corruption of the Cherokee word Sulkalu, the name of a giant who was said to live in the area. Sulkalu literally translates as he has them slanting. In this case, what's slanting is the giant's eyes, so the name Sulkalu is usually translated as slant-eyed giant. Someone must have been being polite to this towering figure when they gave him that name, because that's not the most distinguishing physical feature of the giant. Tsul'kalu was over 7 feet tall, with 7 fingers on each hand, and 7 fingers on each foot. Tsul'kalu is also reportedly tremendously ugly, with an exceptionally hairy body and claw-like fingernails and toenails. An important and powerful figure in the Cherokee cosmos, Tsul'kalu had control of the winds, the rain, thunder, and lightning. Tsul'kalu also owned all of the game in the mountains, and it was only with his blessing that the Cherokee were allowed to hunt. Tsul'kalu was actively involved in the lives of the Cherokee, even at one point taking a human life. There are several different explanations for how Tsul'kalu came to make the carvings on the rock. One explanation is that the carvings are the hunting laws that Tsul'kalu lay down for the Cherokee to obey. Another says that the markings were caused by Tsul'kalu using the rock to catch himself as he jumped down from his farm, which was located in a nearby clearing known as Judaculla Old Fields. One more story focuses on a carving in the lower right-hand side of the rock that resembles a 7-toed foot. It's said that Tsul'kalu was angered by a Cherokee hunting party that had trespassed on his land. In his rage, he jumped down from his farm to run the hunters off of his land, and hit the rock with such strength that he forced his footprint into it. Early European settlers viewed both Judaculla Rock and the nearby Judaculla Old Fields with a degree of superstition, and insisted that the area was the home of the Indian Satan. Rumors circulated of a giant snake that lives in the area, that would swallow people by the dozen. The rock seems to have been an important focal point of Cherokee life in the area, and it's said that it was the site of Cherokee religious rituals up until the forced expulsion in the 19th century. Archaeological evidence has shown that the soapstone in the area around the rock was quarried and shaped on the site over the course of several centuries. The meaning of the carvings on the rock itself remain mysterious, although archaeologists think that some of the more recent carvings may be a map of the area noting the availability of resources and game. Judaculla Rock is unique among rock carving, or petroglyph, sites east of the Mississippi. There are 1,548 individual carvings that have been identified on the rock, more than 3 times the number of the next nearest petroglyph builder in this part of the country at Track Rock Gap in northern Georgia. Recent excavations at the site have revealed that Judaculla Rock was once part of a larger site, arranged with other boulders that have since been removed or destroyed. The rock is also part of a large number of petroglyphs that are found carved on rocks and cliffs across the entire southern Appalachians, and which are only now being rediscovered and extensively catalogued. How to get there? Judaculla Rock is a historic site owned and operated by Jackson County and is open every day until dusk. The rock is located near Kaleos, North Carolina. From US 74, take exit 85 to Business Route 23 through Silva. Stay on 23 for a little over a mile, then turn left onto 107. Drive 8 miles south on 107 and take a left onto Caney Fork Road. Go 2.5 miles, then turn left onto a gravel road and drive for another mile. There's a parking lot for visitors and a recently constructed viewing platform around the rock. 4. Mystery Hill, America's Stonehenge, Salem, New Hampshire. About 40 miles north of the city of Boston, and about 25 miles inland from the Atlantic Ocean, is what appears to be the greatest, and perhaps oldest, megalithic enigma of North America. Mystery Hill, also known as America's Stonehenge, is a site that has puzzled archaeologists for almost a century. Running across the 30 acres of hillside are a series of low walls, cave-like primitive buildings, and tunnels that are spread about with, according to one archaeologist, gigantic confusion and childish disorder, deep cunning and rude naively. While the hill is compared to the English Stonehenge circle, it is, at first glance, physically quite different. Stonehenge is located on a plain, not a hill, and is arranged neatly as a series of concentric circles, horseshoes and squares. Mystery Hill seems a jumble in comparison. The stones involved in Stonehenge are larger, up to 45 tons. The stones at Mystery Hill are smaller, the largest is about 11 tons, and the construction less intricate. Both sites do have some common points, though. Firstly, they served as observatories. Each has been found to have astronomical alignments including summer solstice. Secondly, we know almost nothing about the builders of either location. While we don't know the type of ceremonies that may have gone on at Stonehenge, we do know something about the apparent activity on the hill. One of the main features of the site is an enormous flat stone, like a great table, resting above the ground on four legs. Around the edge of the table runs a groove that leads to a spout. This great slab has been named the sacrificial stone, left, and certainly may have served such a function. The gutter probably allowed the blood of the sacrifice to drain off the top. Underneath the sacrificial stone is a shaft 8 feet long leading to an underground chamber. It seems reasonable that this allowed a priest concealed in the chamber to speak as the voice of an oracle. To a crowd gathered around the altar, the sound would appear to float up from the sacrificial stone like the voice of some disembodied spirit. In addition to the oracle chamber and the sacrificial stone, the site has a number of other artificial caves and passages. At least one was constructed with a drain, to keep them from being flooded. The purpose of the rest of these structures, except one which appears to be a water well, are unknown. The recent history of the hill starts with Jonathan Patty. Patty was a farmer who lived on the site from 1826 to 1848. There are many different and conflicting stories about Patty, including that he was a robber, ran an illicit still, and operated a stop on the famous Underground Railroad that spirited escaped slaves from the South to safety. One thing for sure is that he used one of the structures as a cellar for his farmhouse. Rumors abounded that Patty had built the structures, with the help of his 5 sons, for no apparent reason. This seems unlikely as one of the site stones was found locked in the stump of a tree that started growing around 1769, long before Patty came to the area. In 1936 the site came into the hands of William B. Goodwin. Goodwin had a pet theory that Irish monks had crossed the Atlantic long before Columbus and were responsible for the structures on the hill. Goodwin conducted his own form of archaeology on the site, by getting rid of whatever evidence that didn't fit his theory. The loss of these artifacts is one of the reasons the enigma of Mystery Hill is so deep. Currently the site is administered by the America's Stonehenge Foundation, and is open to visitors. A fee, used to preserve and research the site, is charged. How old is the site? Pottery fragments have been tested and found to go back as far as 1000 BC. Charcoal from one fire pit, measured by radiocarbon dating, was found to be 4,000 years old. Who built it? Unknown. The Native Americans living in the Northeast before Europeans arrived didn't build in stone. The colonial farmers didn't arrive in the valley until 1730, and we know from the locked stone that construction must have been started before 1769. The 39 years in between seem a short time to build such a set of structures, and the sacrificial stone oracle doesn't seem to fit with the colonists' religious beliefs. Was the site constructed in ancient times, by a people we know nothing about? That seems likely. Some theorize that site might be linked to the Greek or Phoenician cultures of the Mediterranean. Certainly there is a startling similarity between the construction of the oracle on Mystery Hill and those found in ancient temples in Malta and Greece. The truth is we may never know who built this site. We may never know how they used the astronomical information contained in its alignments. We may never know what the voice of the oracle said. And we may never know what, or whom, was sacrificed on its hard, cold, great, stone altar. 5. Barclay Mystery Walls, San Francisco, California. The ancient Barclay Walls remain an ancient unsolved enigma. Often referred to as the Great Wall of California, it still remains unknown who constructed the stone walls and for what reason. Could they be evidence that an ancient unknown advanced civilization once settled in the East Bay? Ancient walls leading to a mysterious stone circle. Stretching for over 50 miles, the East Bay Mystery Walls are found up and down the hills of the East Bay from Barclay to San Jose, USA. A 50-mile-long wall is odd enough, but what if the wall was not alone? What if there were other walls? A chain of walls all along Northern California, because as it turns out, there are other mysterious walls in North California but not just in the San Francisco Bay Area. Instead, these series of walls may stretch as far as the Oregon border. After meandering throughout the Oakland Hills, the walls head inland towards Mount Diablo, where we encounter mysterious stone circles, up to 30 feet in diameter. In one place the walls form a spiral 200 feet wide that circles a large builder. Who were the mysterious builders of the Great Wall of California? Some scholars who examined the ancient ruins proposed the stone walls are the work of settlers from Mongolia, as the Chinese tended to wall in their cities. Perhaps the mystery walls were reminiscent of the Great Wall of China. Did the Zhenghu fleet which set out to circumnavigate the world reach California? Anchors found in Baja California, mysterious writings from a Buddhist monk in Mesoamerica, even a sunken 17th century junk found near Chico, all suggest the Chinese explorer was present in this part of the world. Other scholars have theorized that they were built by the early missionaries, and yet another group still wonders if Sir Francis Drake did not leave colonists behind at the site, where he completed the circumnavigation of the globe. There are also those who say the Aloan people, also known as the Costanoan, a Native American Indian tribe, raised the wall, but like the other theories there is too little evidence to confirm the hypothesis. The identity of the builders of the Great Wall of California remains shrouded in mystery. Many of the stones are quite heavy, and the entire site appears to be very old. The wall is up to 5 feet tall in some places, and it was constructed from boulders of varying sizes. Some are basketball-sized rocks, while others are large sandstone boulders weighing a ton or more. Many of the formations have sunk far into the earth, and are often completely overgrown with different plants. The purpose of the walls is unknown. At first sight one might think it was defense construction of some kind, but there are certain problems with this theory. The wall is not continuous and it is composed of multiple sections. In addition, the wall is not high enough to have been used as defense mechanisms. It is therefore highly unlikely it was used as a fence. So, why was it built? Unfortunately, the walls haven't been subjected to a serious scientific examination. Archaeologists and scientists have not investigated this curious and interesting ancient site in more detail. For now, the ancient Barkley Walls remain an ancient unsolved North American mystery. 6. The weird abandoned domes of Casa Grande, Arizona. This is an artist's depiction of the Casa Grande, Great House, and its surrounding compound as it may have appeared around 1350 CE, one of the largest prehistoric structures ever built in North America. Its purpose remains a mystery. Archaeologists have discovered evidence that the ancient Sonoran Desert people, who built the Casa Grande, also developed wide-scale irrigation farming, and extensive trade connections which lasted over 1,000 years, until about 1450 CE. Archaeologists call a site where there are earthen buildings, red on buff pottery, and extensive canals Hohokam, but this is not the name of a tribe or a people. Years of misunderstanding have confused the ancestors of the O'odham, Hopi, and Zuni people with the name Hohokam, which is not a word in any of their languages nor the name of a separate people. The Casa Grande was abandoned around 1450 CE since the ancient Sonoran Desert people, who built it, left no written language behind. Written historic accounts of the Casa Grande begin with the journal entries of Padre Eusebio Francisco Kino when he visited the ruins in 1694. In his description of the large ancient structure before him, he wrote the words Casa Grande, or Great House, which are still used today. More became known about the ruins with the later visits of Lieutenant Colonel Juan Bautista de Anza's expedition in 1775, and Brigadier General Stephen Watts Kearny's military detachment in 1846. Subsequent articles written about the Casa Grande increased public interest. During the 1860s through the 1880s, more people began to visit the ruins with the arrival of a railroad line 20 miles to the west, and a connecting stagecoach route that ran wide by the Casa Grande. The resulting damage from souvenir hunting, graffiti and outright vandalism raised serious concerns about the preservation of the Casa Grande. Anthropologist and historian Adolf Bandler visited the Casa Grande ruins in 1883 to 1884, and reported on its condition and probable significance. The Hemingway Southwestern Archaeological Expedition of 1887 to 1888, sponsored by Massachusetts philanthropist Mary Hemingway, and led by anthropologist Frank H. Cushing, produced further information on the deterioration of the Casa Grande. As a result, several influential Bostonians urged Massachusetts Senator George F. Hoare to present a petition before the U.S. Senate in 1889 requesting that the government take steps to repair and protect the ruins. Repair work began the following year, and in 1892, President Benjamin Harrison set aside 1 square mile of Arizona territory surrounding the Casa Grande ruins as the first prehistoric and cultural reserve established in the United States. The General Land Office took over management of the ruins, and hired a young man named Frank Pinkley in 1901, to be the first on-site custodian. In 1903 a shelter roof of corrugated iron supported by redwood timbers was built over the Casa Grande, and between 1906 and 1908 major excavations and repairs of the ruins were conducted under the direction of Jesse Fuchs of the Bureau of Ethnology. Most of the lower walls visible today were uncovered at that time. President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed Casa Grande ruins to be a national monument on August 3, 1918, and management of the ruins was transferred to the National Park Service. Frank Pinkley stayed on as custodian and eventually became the superintendent of all Southwest monuments. Part of his promotion effort was to produce a wide range of literature about Casa Grande ruins, and to host the annual Arizona pageant from 1926 to 1930. Several important construction projects were undertaken during the 1930s. The main part of the visitor center building with adjacent parking lot and entrance road, and a new steel shelter roof over the Casa Grande, were completed in 1932. Between 1937 and 1940, the Civilian Conservation Corps constructed a number of adobe buildings to support park operations. All of these structures remain in use today, and are now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. As a result, the general physical appearance of Casa Grande ruins has changed very little since the 1940s. Continuing research, ruins repairs, interpretive programs, and visitor center remodeling are all part of the continuing effort to provide the best visitor experience possible, and to fulfill the National Park Service's mission to protect, preserve and make available for present and future generations the many wonders of Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. 7. The Mystery of the Bighorn Medicine Wheel - Lovell, Wyoming. Located high in the Bighorn Mountains of northern Wyoming, the centuries-old medicine wheel, as it is known today, seems to be a testament to astronomical applications used by people who lived in the northern plains long before white men came on the scene, or even the Crow Indians, but the structure remains as mysterious as Britain's Stonehenge. The Bighorn Medicine Wheel sits at nearly 10,000 feet, above sea level near the summit of Medicine Mountain, on a ridge offering incredible vistas. The wheel can typically only be reached by human visitors during the warm summer months. Constructed of stones gathered in the vicinity of the landmark, the Medicine Wheel has a diameter of 80 feet, 245 feet in circumference, with stones piled inside to form a central, donut-shaped cairn about 12 feet in diameter and 2 feet high. 28 stone spokes connect the central cairn to the outside circle, and around the circle lie 6 other stone cairns, some large enough for a person to sit in. The 28 spokes probably correspond to the 28 days lunar cycle, but the number 28 seems to also fit into another part of the astronomical puzzle. The 6 cairns arranged around the wheel are definitely related to the night skies. 2 of the cairns, when lined up with the center cairn, mark the rising and setting summer solstice sun. Cairn pairs also line up to show the once yearly heliacal, or dawn risings, of certain stars in the summer. The heliacal rising of a star is the day a star can first be seen just before dawn, after being behind the sun for a whole season, thus pinpointing the corresponding date. 4 stars figure in these observations: Fomalhaut, 28 days before the summer solstice; Aldebaran, rising the 2 mornings just before solstice; Rigel, 28 days after solstice; and Sirius, rising 28 days after Rigel's pre-dawn appearance. Estimates regarding the age of the Bighorn Medicine Wheel vary, with 1200 AD being the time period when the star alignments with the cairns were most accurate, according to Jack Robinson, the last archaeoastronomer to publish on the wheel. Slight changes in the Earth's orbit since then have resulted in a not-so-perfect astronomical fit star-wise, but the solstice alignments are still accurate today. With certainty, it is known that the wheel dates to before 1600 AD, because it was at the wheel where the Crow first arrived, and a vision quest at the site caused a Crow leader to realize they had found their homeland. The central cairn of the wheel, which may have supported a large wooden pole, is thought to be the oldest part of the structure. It extends below the wheel and wind-blown dust and debris have buried much of it. A bison skull has often been placed on the center cairn during Native American ceremonies. Different groups of Native Americans have utilized the Bighorn Medicine Wheel, and other areas of Medicine Mountain for ritualistic purposes. over the centuries and continue to do so today. An anonymous Cheyenne elder of the modern era said that, the tribes traditionally went and still go to the sacred mountain. The people sought the high mountain for prayer. They sought spiritual harmony with the powerful spirits there. Many offerings have been left on this mountain. Prayers of thanks were offered for all of creation. All of this is done so that spiritual harmony will be our constant companion throughout the year. While some Crow people believe the wheel was built before the light came, other Crow legends have the sun god dropping the wheel from the sky. And some Crow people believe the arrangement of stones was laid down by a Shoshone band known as the Sheep Eaters. But whoever built the medicine wheel left no clue to modern investigators as to its exact use. Today practitioners of New Age religion as well as Native Americans are drawn to the site of the medicine wheel for ceremonial purposes. The Bighorn medicine wheel was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1969, and last year the site was expanded and renamed the Medicine Wheel, Medicine Mountain National Historic Landmark. The additional 4,000 acres also contains significant Native American sacred areas, some of which are intact. Medicine Mountain also has geological significance. There are 10 places on Earth known as nuclei of continents, where relatively small patches of some of the oldest rocks on Earth are found. These sections of ancient Earth were first cooled on the surface of the planet's crust 2 to 3 billion years ago, and overlaying younger rock has worn away. Also known as continental roots, these rocks were part of the supercontinent Gondwana, which began to break apart some 300 million years ago, and separated into the continents we know today between 65 million to 1 million years ago. The continents continue to drift today, but laid bare for the open eye to see are the layers of time exposed at Medicine Mountain, with the medicine wheel essentially floating on some of the oldest surface stone in existence on the planet. A nearly 360-degree view reveals a steady geological march, downward from the summit of Medicine Mountain to the new Earth, and stone along the valley floors below, a look at the Earth's timeline that is unequaled by the other 9 continental routes on the Earth's surface. The Bighorn medicine wheel is the best example among several medicine wheels scattered across the American West and Canada. To reach the wheel, take US Highway 14A west out of Lovell, Wyoming. A journey up the extremely steep western slope of the Bighorn Range is made via an incredible set of switchbacks that snake their way up the mountain. Turn off Highway 14 onto Forest Road, where parking is available at a visitor center located near the wheel. A walk of a mile or so is required from the visitor center to the site, but handicapped visitors can drive directly to the wheel. The roads are usually closed from October until May, so plan your visit accordingly, and get in touch with your spiritual self at Wyoming's Medicine Wheel. Note, the wheel's cairns were once much larger and taller. 40 years ago, recognition of this American Stonehenge caused a worldwide stir in the media. In 2012, evidence suggests the wheel continues to track and predict astronomical changes through time. 8. The Mystery of Dighton Rock, Berkeley, Massachusetts. In the fall of 1680, John Danforth, with his freshly minted degree from Harvard College, visited the south shore of Massachusetts in Taunton and took a side trip to see one of the curiosities of the age, the Dighton Writing Rock. The rock, probably carved by American Indians, recorded a time when a hostile ship arrived and fought with the local people. He recorded, and thus began the mystery of Dighton Rock. There is no solution to the mystery of Dighton Rock, but it has fascinated scholars, amateur archaeologists, students of New England Native American tribes and tourists for centuries. The rock itself weighs 40 tons and is about 5 feet high and 11 feet long. It bears markings and inscription across one of its sides, that have been interpreted more than 25 times, and generated more than 35 theories as to what they mean. It rested in the Taunton River in Dighton, for more than 300 years, where it was partially submerged at high tide. Danforth, who would later become a minister in Dorchester, helped popularize the rock with his brief description, which was forwarded to the Royal Society of London for its consideration, and his drawing of the rock remains in the collections of the British Museum today. The prolific Cotton Mather highlighted the rock in a sermon in 1689, which he later published as The Wonderful Works of God, commemorated praises bespoke for the God of Heaven in a Thanksgiving sermon delivered on December 19, 1689, containing reflections upon the excellent things done by the great God. Mather didn't speculate about the specifics of the writings on the rock, but rather mentioned them as writings from a previous era carved on a large rock. No man alive knows how or when. However, among his other theories, Mather postulated that before the noble Puritans arrived in New England, a group of explorers inspired by Satan had crossed from Europe and settled in America, only to die miserably. Perhaps this was a remnant of that earlier group. In 1767, Ezra Stiles, then president of Yale, declared that the figures on the rock were Phoenician, theorizing that the Phoenicians, mainly known for their seafaring trade in the Mediterranean, had managed a visit to North America and left the writing as a calling card. That idea gained traction in Europe, as well, where Danforth's drawing was receiving fresh attention among British and French historians. Others concluded the markings were from Armenians, who made their way to America via Siberia. And another camp, which had been trying to connect the origins of Native American tribes with Asia, proposed that the characters were from explorers from Japan, China or other parts of Asia. Later, in 1789, George Washington opined, while touring New England, that the Dighton markings were left by American Indians. They were similar, he concluded, to Native American drawings he was familiar with in Virginia. Thus, the founding father cast his lot with Danforth's original reporting, that the American Indians had left the message. In 1837, the controversy was reignited when Danish writer Charles Christian Raffin published his Antiquities Americanae, which contained more than 40 pages of analysis of the Dighton rock. Raffin concluded the markings on the rock were Norse, and found in the writing the inscription, Thorfinn and his 151 companions took possession of this land. Almost no one else has been able to see the same thing, despite countless hours of study devoted to searching. In 1912, Edmund Burke de la Barre laid a new claim on the rock, arguing it was evidence of Portuguese discovery of America. The Brown University scholars summered near the rock for many years, and had spent countless hours trying to interpret the writing. He concluded that the inscription was written by Portuguese explorer Miguel Corte-Real, who had left Portugal in 1502, on an exploratory voyage and was never heard from again. De la Barre proposed that he had been heard from, in the inscription on the rock that read, I, Miguel Corte-Real, 1511. In this place, by the will of God, I became a chief of the Indians. In 1963, a group of preservationists finally wrested the rock from the riverbed, and placed it in its own museum in Berkeley, Massachusetts, where it continues to inspire controversy. In 2002, a scholar claimed that the inscriptions were Chinese, and evidence of the Chinese discovery of America, a claim that was as controversial as any. 9. The Great Serpent Mound of Ohio. The Great Serpent Mound is a 1,300 foot long, and 3 foot high prehistoric effigy mound located on a plateau of a crater along Ohio Brush Creek in Adams County, Ohio, and is the largest surviving prehistoric effigy mound in the world. Resembling an uncoiling serpent, the mound is steeped in mystery and controversy. Despite over a century of research, there is no conclusive evidence about what it represents, when it was built, and what its true purpose was, though various astronomical alignments suggest it may have functioned as a type of calendar. The Serpent Mound conforms to the curve of the land on which it rests, with its head approaching a cliff above a stream. It winds back and forth for more than 800 feet and has 7 distinct coils, ending in a triple-coiled tail. The serpent head has an open mouth extending around the east end, of a 120-foot-long hollow oval feature, which is generally viewed as an egg, although other interpretations suggest it is the sun, the body of a frog, or merely the remnant of a platform. To the west of the effigy, is a triangular mound measuring approximately 32 feet at its base and long axis. The serpent mound is believed to have been laid out all at once, with a layer of clay and ash, and reinforced with stones. Thousands of years ago, Native American peoples populated the Ohioan landscape, with mounds and massive earthworks. Initial research attributed the effigy to the Adena culture, which flourished from 1000 BC to 100 AD. The Adena culture are well known for building burial and effigy mounds, many of which are located near the Great Serpent Mound. However, Radiocarbon dating on pieces of charcoal found within the Serpent Mound established that people worked on the mound around 1070 AD. Thus, the mound may have been built by the Fort ancient peoples, who lived in the Ohio Valley from 1000s to 1550s. Nevertheless, the testing is not conclusive as it only reveals that 1,000-year-old charcoal was found within the mound. This could have ended up there long after the effigy was originally built. Interpretations of the Serpent Mound. The most predominant theory is that the Serpent Mound represents a giant snake, which is slowly uncoiling itself and about to seize a huge egg within its extended jaws. However, many theories abound suggesting various interpretations. For instance, some think it may represent an eclipse, or the phases of the moon. Others have speculated that it represents the myth of the horned serpent found in many Native American cultures. In 1909, local German Baptist minister Lyndon West proposed another unusual theory. The serpent was writhing in its death throes as punishment for tempting Adam, and even what West believed was the original Garden of Eden. There are serious suggestions that the serpent is intimately connected with the heavens. Several writers have suggested that the serpent is a model of the constellation we call the Little Dipper, its tail coiled about the North Star. Various alignments of the serpent correspond to astronomical features, such as alignments of the sun and moon. In 1987, Clark and Marjorie Hardman published their finding that the oval to head area of the serpent is aligned to the summer solstice sunset, suggesting that one of the effigy's purposes was to mark the turning of the year so that planting and gathering and hunting could be planned. William F. Romaine has suggested an array of 6 lunar alignments corresponding to the curves in the effigy's body. If the Serpent Mound were designed to site both solar and lunar arrays, it would reflect the consolidation of astronomical knowledge into a single symbol. Generations of researchers agree with the theory that the Serpent Mound holds astronomical significance, but the intent of those who built the serpent, and how it was used still remains a mystery. Many scholars believe the Serpent Mound was used in religious ceremonies. When settlers first discovered the mound, there was a fire-scorched stone monument in the egg-shaped head, which has led some to suggest it was used as an altar of some sort, possibly sacrificial, based on the ceremonial knives unearthed among the blackened stones, and a number of headless skeletons discovered in grave sites nearby. Whatever its true purpose, the Serpent Mound attests to the ingenuity of its creators. As the ancient Ohio Trail website so aptly states, the genius of its designers remains apparent. This blend of beauty, familiarity, abstraction, power, precision, and mystery, make Ohio's Serpent Mound one of the great, iconic images for all of human antiquity. 10. The mysterious Blythe and Kaleos, Blythe, California. The Blythe and Kaleos, often called America's Nazca Lines, are a series of gigantic geoglyphs found 15 miles north of Blythe, California in the Colorado Desert. In the southwestern United States alone, there are over 600 Kaleos, anthropomorphic geoglyphs, but what separates the ones near Blythe is their size and intricacy. In total, there are 6 figures in 3 different locations, all within 1,000 feet from one another, situated on 2 mesas. The geoglyphs depict drawings of humans, animals, objects, and geometric shapes, all of which can be seen from the air. The Blythe geoglyphs were first discovered on November 12, 1931 by Army Air Corps pilot George Palmer while flying from the Hoover Dam to Los Angeles. His discovery led to a survey of the area, which resulted in the huge figures becoming classified as historical landmarks and referred to as giant desert figures. Lacking funds due to the Depression, it would take until the 1950s to investigate the site further. In 1952, the National Geographic Society and Smithsonian Institution sent a team of archaeologists to explore the Kaleos, and an article appeared in the September issue of National Geographic with aerial photos. It would take another 5 years for the geoglyphs to be restored, and fences erected in order to protect them from vandalism and damage. It should be noted that there is visible tire damage on some of the geoglyphs due to the area being used for desert training during WEI by General George S. Patton. Today the Blythe and Kaleos are protected by 2 lines of fences, and open to the public at all times as State Historic Monument No. 101. The creators of the Blythe and Kaleos are believed to be Native Americans that lived along the Colorado River. but there is no agreement as to which tribes made them or why. One possibility put forward is that they were constructed by the Patayan, who occupied the region from ca. 700 to 1550 AD. While the meaning behind the glyphs remains unknown, according to native Mohave and Quechan tribes of the area, the human figures represent Mastamo, the creator of earth and all life, while the animal figures represent Judaculla, one of two mountain lions, persons who played a role in the creation story. In ancient times, ceremonial dances were held by natives in the area to honor the creator of life. Since geoglyphs are difficult to date, it is impossible to know the age of when they were made, but they are estimated to be between 450 to 2,000 years old. In support of the latter, some of the giant figures are archaeologically associated with 2,000-year-old cliff dwellings. However, newer research by the University of California, Berkeley has dated them to around 900 AD. The largest of the intaglios depicts a male figure or giant, measuring 171 feet. A secondary figure, measuring 102 feet from head to toe, is of a male with a distinct phallus. The last human figure is oriented north-south, its arms are outstretched, its feet pointing outward and has visible knees and elbows. It measures 105.6 feet from head to toe. The fisherman intaglio depicts a man with a spear, two fish below him, and a sun and serpent above. It is the most controversial of the glyphs as some believe it was actually carved in the 1930s, although the prevailing view still is that it is much older. The animal figures are believed to be either horses or mountain lions. A snake intaglio depicts a rattlesnake whose eyes are captured in the form of two rocks. It measures 150 feet in length and has been damaged by vehicles over time. If nothing else, the Blythe glyphs are an expression of Native American art form, and provide a window into the artistic abilities of the era. Whatever artists made the Blythe geoglyphs did so by scraping away dark desert stones, to reveal lighter colored soil underneath. They outlined the symbols by heaping rocks pulled away from the center around the outside edges, creating sunken designs.